Well, here we go. We're into game two. We're all wrapped up pretty warm. As you can see, that fine figure of man, Christophalos, is across there in a lovely, thick-looking sweater and suede jacket as well. An icon of style in the Northern Wargaming League for sure. But what the army is that's sat in front of him is feudal Scots, or medieval Scots to be more accurate. All those slightly indistinct. I think this was taken from a bit far away and the lighting wasn't great, so it's not the sharpest of photos, I'm afraid. But all of those troops are mediocre pike. Really tough because they have that base factor of 2 for being pikemen, but brittle because they're mediocre. It makes it harder for them to rack up the big scores, and against an armoured opponent or a quality opponent, that can sort of count. What you've got over on the right here, you've got a bit of a forest, you've got a village. It's really become a narrowed down table. That's probably a waterway next door. There's a field here as well. I was really hoping for a very open piece of terrain, because the way to beat this is to get around the flanks or create flanks for it. But unfortunately that now looks pretty secure. So what I'm going to have to do is engineer some flanks for my two commands who've deployed sort of not really knowing what's going to happen. And as usual, looking at this terrain, I thought I'd be over clever probably and send the flank march, the tiny command, over on this side so that it can kind of pop out behind here, and the obvious place for it to come would be here. But I thought, let's do the non-obvious thing and send them over this way. And there's this ambush marker here. I need to flush that out, try and sort of trap if there's anything there with some cavalry and engage it before this flank march comes on, because again the expectation will be that it comes on over there. And we're trying to do the meat grinder thing again, engage these guys, try and create as many flanks as possible and engage them with the meat grinder. They're better than most of my troops frontally, but in a slog my troops would hopefully try to win, and with an overlap that will start to make a difference as well. So let's have a look at what kind of crops up next. So my light horse rush forward, trigger the ambush, and it's the obvious ambush for this Scots army. It's the Highlanders, and I think, to be honest, I'd probably forgotten that. I'd failed to look at the book and think obviously there'll be some Highlanders. I was expecting something a bit less meaty than this, but no, there's a load of swordsmen with bow who clearly my light horse were never going to go through that forest against anything, but these guys are quite dangerous. But if I can draw them out, if I can make them think they've got an opportunity of coming forward, all I really want to do is get them away from here so that there's room for this flank march to arrive, and ideally for it to arrive quite late. So what's happening here? Just again a sort of pseudo flank march, throw a light horse there. That does force something in this army out of here, takes maybe a couple out the board, throw the war wagon forward. And then these guys, I think this arc command must have not started with very many pips, so the general is dragging the war wagon forward just to kind of drop it here, to give all these sort of guys here a bit of a problem. The longer they take to get to it and then to beat it, the better. And what this is going to allow is this command to move up, move across, and try and concentrate here on this end of it in conjunction with the other main command that I've got here. So as you can see, all those guys in the wood have got bows, they can shoot. That causes some damage. I'm dropping back there pretty quickly. This is a no-win situation. I've been a little bit surprised by how many of them there are. So what's happening now, you can see, I think maybe that's a unit of bowmen. They've gone out to deal with these light horse, so I've already whittled one away. These guys are being slowed down by a few handgunners. They'll be able to push forward soon. This is pushed up and sort of concentrated to give room for this command to fit in here, and clearly these knights need to be stopping these guys coming out of the wood. And this is sort of playing into my plan in a way. This army is trying to sort of shuffle across. Some of them are turn and move, some of them are wheeled, so there's gaps starting to appear in what was once a very big solid line, and basically a gap is an opportunity for my guys, who a lot of them fight on a factor 1, to get an overlap, get themselves up to 2 when they're fighting these pikemen who all fight at 2 as well. So each flank is an opportunity for my slightly better quality, better armoured troops to go toe to toe in base factors against the big blocks of Scottish pikemen. So what's happened, same as happened in the first game, to be honest. My overly clever flank march has arrived too bloody soon, and what that's done, these guys have had to fall back, otherwise they just get shredded, and that's allowing some of the Scots to turn around and start harassing my guys. It also means these pikemen who are moving across here have now got something to do. It means the reserve hasn't really been committed as yet. That could come out and deal with them as well. Suddenly this very clever position, which was supposed to arrive when the pikemen are kind of here, it's arrived too soon, and they could end up easily getting bottled up. But this big commander's now started to move. I think the wagon's pretty much in place. The general can devote his attention to sending these guys to try and form a more coherent line here. And those sorts of gaps I'm looking at, there's a gap here. These people are going to struggle to sort of slide across. There might be some gaps developing here. So it's starting to work out if I can assemble a proper line. So yeah, here's a close-up. Yet more of these bowmen come scooting backwards and start shooting. It's very difficult for my guys to rush past. There's nowhere to rush into. The rest of the pikemen haven't got far enough forwards. So this is suddenly a bit of a tricky situation. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with they've arrived too soon, and sadly because of where these guys are sort of in the wrong place. But what's happening here is this is kind of starting to look good. The pikemen are rushing forwards, and this huge gap, this lot seem committed to taking on the wagon. It's always a tempting target. They've got to do something about it. And here is an opportunity possibly for my knights, possibly for these guys to gang up on the end of the line. That's a foot knight. It's going to be tough to beat, but there's nothing here. That's the extra thing. And they've drifted across, so they're kind of getting in front of these guys, which sort of suggests they may well be tempted to go and just block off this flank march. So if I've whittled down, what, 4, 5, 6, I've got 6 of these pikemen sort of out of the game now, and that's leaving 5 of them here and the foot knight to have a go at. That's half the enemy force isn't necessarily in play, whereas I can pretty much leverage all of my troops against this block here, which is not a bad outcome so far. This is looking out from the top, quickly zooming in a little bit. Yep, you can see there's still a reserve. Those knights have been tempted by my potential run for the baggage, so they've come to block that off. Some bowmen have come to block it off as well. It's just whittling stuff away. These guys, it's going to be tough for them to get there because the wagon's in trouble. Well, sorry, the wagon's deployed now. I've deployed the wagon, making it slightly harder to beat. And here the knights, as I said, are wheeling around to threaten this guy. These guys are here sort of keeping them honest. They can't really jump out with a knight there. My bowmen are lining up to engage in a sort of fairly fruitless shooting battle, which they'll possibly lose, but my bowmen are doing nothing in the main line really here. You know, there's probably enough screening troops here, and I might as well just pin them into combat. And I do have cavalry here and some half decent lights with impact. If these chaps did jump out, I could sort of have a go at them, so they're pinned in there as much. My flank march looks like it's already lost something here. These guys are just getting out of the way. They're just in a bit of trouble. This is probably as close as we're going to get to that baggage. So what's happening here? This is great. They've tried to join up. These two guys have obviously realized that is more than enough force to deal with my hapless flank march, especially with the guys in the woods. So they've now joined up into a separate block here, but it's left a gap in here as well. So there's a possibility again to exploit that gap. I'm trying to rush forward, get as close as I can. These can't really charge into the pikes, but they'd love to charge into these guys with an overlap ideally. And this lump of pikemen looks like it's sort of slowly dead set on taking on the wagon, which is now past their line. So they are really going to struggle to defend this end of their other block of pikemen. It's become a little bit disjointed, which is what I want. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 flanks all available to potentially do stuff. That's a hard one, maybe 3, but that's all I really wanted out of what started off as a solid line. Yeah, flank march is in all sorts of trouble. I think the bowmen have shredded one. There's another one gone there. They haven't really got a better plan other than to try and escape through the village, which is almost impossible. But at least these guys are now going to struggle to come out. The cavalry are here. I've got a couple facing that way. If they did jump out, this is so-so. It's kind of okay to take them on. This would probably make a difference. So maybe they're kind of stuck there. And I'm facing off this with a couple of the knights. So they're going to struggle to push forward, which allows me to concentrate on this block here. And here it is, concentrating on that block. I've got a knight into the foot knight, done it some damage, which is great at impact. There's potential to get overlaps here. These guys are wheeling around. They seem to be keen on getting close to it, but they're still not into this, and they need to start fighting it to beat it before they're going to have any impact on the battle. And And again, this gap still exists. Very difficult for them to slide across. Then they start to leave a big gap here. They're kind of halfway between the two, and I think they possibly not spotted what can happen next. So here we are fighting. Yep, the foot knight is really in trouble now. It's a red one, that's hits. This is obviously bad news. There's 2 hits on the wagon out of its 4, but look at what a mess these pikemen are in there. You know, that formation is now broken into 3 different bits. One of them's sort of facing the wrong way. They'll be running into each other if anything happens. The crossbowmen are kind of still there. I've taken a hit. This is one of the new, well, not relatively new, Donington hit markers. It's a bit over glamorous, but it's pretty cool. And we're sort of getting ready to launch an attack on these pikemen if we dare. And what we've done here is these knights have now rushed up as close as they can get to pin this pipe block in place, which allows this unit to sort of sneak past the front line here into this gap. These guys will stop them responding to it. They're pinned by these guys. This fight is gone. I've got an overlap here to try and make mincemeat of this bit, who can then threaten the pikemen. And again, these guys seem a bit becalmed now. I've given them a bit of a target to look at. This is still potentially threatening to them. So they're sort of blocked up there. And these pike are not really in the game. These pike are not really in the game, but almost all of my stuff looks like it's playing pretty soon. Pretty messy shot, my flank march rushing away from anything it should be avoiding. So, bada boom, here's the knights going through the pikemen, supported by the crossbowmen, putting even more pressure onto the flank of these. Looks like the reserve knights have now got a job. I've taken a hit. These pikemen can't turn. They're facing knights to the front. These are coming up. There's potential for overlaps here as well. So that situation I wanted to engineer with overlaps against the pike is coming true, and I have picked on that weak link there as well. Here come their impetuous knights coming into mine. That goes to yellow. That's another hit, but I've got an overlap. The pikemen have now beaten the war wagon and they're starting to reform, but it's still a bit of a mess. They're still out of the game. These are still pinned. So it's how soon, when's the right time to get these people into action? And there it is. That's the magic turn. This one fits into that gap, goes into the flank of this pipe block. I've got spear in the front. I've got halberdiers into this one. And actually, although this is a bit of a risk, this guy's still on 2 hits. I've shoved up a spearman to give an overlap to this knight in the sort of second rank. When this knight, if this knight goes, they take a hit, but this allows me to charge a mediocre pike with what's probably that might be an ordinary knight, but an elite knight with an overlap. We're relying on armor and a bit of luck there, but this is a real big problem for the Scots, because that's a general. So there's no actual real troops here to deal with this thing munching up the line. These guys can't really come forward. They're trying to come forward. I'm blocking them off with bowmen, but this is where the big kind of crunching is going on. And here we see the impetuous knights flooding through. They've broken and they've gone straight into the spearmen and evaporated them on contact, which is a little bit unfortunate. Even the spearman with the hit should possibly be able to stand up, but that is an embedded general, so it's a pretty pokey piece of kit. But as you can see, the swordsmen are now chewing up the line of pikes as well. There's another red hit marker there, so they've already done one of them. That one's on its last legs. That one could be in trouble. It's a question of what's actually going to happen here. Is there enough time for either side now to through this, the whole sheer number of troops, the width, the place where nobody really wants to fight. There's a lot of action going on here, but it may well not be enough. And let's have a look at this again. Yep, they're assembling for another attack, but there's not too much there. And this is showing a slightly clearer vision of reserves coming up, but spearmen are there to block it. I think I've maybe gone in with some knights to chance my arm here, block what these guys off with another unit of spearmen. So that's kind of going to be tough for much more to develop than maybe a couple more casualties here. The Scots have come out of the wood. I've got nothing better to do than just charge them and give it a go. This flank march has been a bit of a disaster and it's cost me some points, but the rest of the game in the centre is sort of starting to get to a point at which it will suddenly take a while for much more to happen. So these guys have now chomped through 2-3 of them. This thing looks like it's in a lot of trouble. He could do a lot of damage potentially, but only to one of these units. And as you see, all of these 4 pikemen here, I've attacked one of them in the flank with some light horse. It's not great factors, but he is injured and it just turns them away. if I survive the first round, they then have to turn, and it just reduces the combat here. This is just about drawing off all these guys, and they've still not really done much other than kill one. This is a third of the combat infantry, and they've killed one war wagon. These guys haven't quite got through to do anything too threatening. The bowmen are still blocking them off. These guys have ended up with too much to do, so it's sort of petering out now. Even though there's a lot going on in the middle, there's just too much stuff out of scope to for either side really to get that close to defeat before this one times out in the very chilly weather that we were having. And amazingly, finally the flank march does something useful. It actually causes a hit against the odds going in there against these medium swordsman bowmen. Maybe I should have done that start straight off, but they weren't kind enough to come out of the wood. But yeah, not the greatest flank march, and came on too soon and sort of in the wrong place, but too soon is probably in the wrong place as far as that goes. And with that, sadly, the game timed out.